in Dirt Rider and MX Racer test. This year, we've even heard some favorable comparisons to that other CR. And we're going to kick things off in superlative fashion. Brian Drever and the staff of Motorcyclist Magazine rolling out the big guns, the heavy artillery, for what could be considered the ultimate test of production motorcycles. Hang on.
These days, the bikes are all good, and I think the key for us is to distinguish the differences. A lot of people can't ride these bikes. They can't test ride them, and I think they depend on the magazines to give them some insight into what they feel like. So our goal really is to put people in the seat and give them an accurate feel of what the bike feels like, both to ride and sit on and live with for days and days, and how comfortable over several hours. And I think we do that pretty well.
We've got an interesting group of motorcycles this year. We've got 3 return players in the Honda CBR 929RR, the Kawasaki ZX9R, and the Yamaha R1. In our comparison last year, where we put the Suzuki GSX-R 750 in among these leader bikes, the conclusion was that the Honda 929 was actually the winner there. We positioned the Suzuki third, and it really did very well for itself as a 750. So we were really interested to see what would happen when we got the full Suzuki GSX-R 1000, the full leader bike here, which arrived for 2001.
I think the key to getting a good all-around evaluation of these bikes, especially as street bikes, is to get a wide range of riders. And we do have a wide range. We have some more entry-level folks, we have some mid-level riders, and we have some experts. And I think that's key, because I think when you boil down the impressions from all 3 rider levels, I think you end up getting a pretty accurate idea of how the bikes actually work in the real world.
The first impression is made as you throw a leg over and check around your seating area for any and all items you may have brought on board. The pre-flight inspection, so to speak.
Ergonomically, the CBR 929RR is really comfortable, feels almost like an F4, maybe a little bit bigger, but really comfortable. And the bars feel a little bit steeper in angle compared to the rest. Ergonomically, the ZX9R is probably the biggest and widest seat. It's really comfortable for long-term riding, and the bars are a little wider too. The Yamaha YZF-R1 is same as last year, pretty comfortable, but not a lot of wind protection on the freeways. And ergonomically, the GSX-R 1000 is just like the 750. It's a little bit taller, but it's comfortable on the freeway and around town, and makes good for all-around riding.
For me, for a taller person, the Kawasaki is the most comfortable, followed by the Honda, has a little bit more legroom. And then it's pretty close between the Suzuki and the Yamaha. They're more just different than one being better than the other one. In terms of just sheer comfort, the Kawasaki is it, and the Honda's second, and then it's whichever of the other 2 fits you better. In my case, it's going to be the Suzuki.
Okay, enough sitting around comparing office chairs. Time to head out toward the open road for some subjective comparisons from a moving cockpit.
Honda says there are no changes to the motorcycle, which was introduced for the 2000 model year. We're not sure we believe them. This bike, our test bike for this year, is a little stronger, a little smoother, a little more sophisticated than our 2000 model was. Perhaps that was an early production bike, and of course now that we've had a year's worth of production, this is a little further down the line. In any event, Honda has definitely tweaked this motorcycle in ways that it doesn't really want to talk about or won't talk about. It's a better motorcycle this year than it was last year.
The Honda, for starters, is probably the easiest bike to ride, in my opinion, because it turns very quickly. It's the lightest steering and the most accurate steering motorcycle here. So it's the most intuitive for someone who isn't really a hardcore sport rider.
On a twisty road, the Honda still comes out on top, I believe. It's got a very small feel, a very clickable feel, and feedback is very good.
Kawasaki ZX-9 is at a little bit of a disadvantage here, being the largest, heaviest motorcycle. It's 32 pounds heavier than the lightest bike here, and it has about the same horsepower as everything else but the GSX-R. And really, it does feel a little more cumbersome when you're really trying to hustle the motorcycle. Is that a disadvantage in the real world? Not really, no. The bike has a very good ergonomic profile. The engine is extremely smooth, and it's the bike that I think most of us, if we were to answer honestly, would prefer if we had to go from here to Seattle in an afternoon.
The ZX-9 from Kawasaki is the biggest and heaviest thing out there. It's a real good bike for sport touring or long-term riding. It's real comfortable, still a little bit heavier than the rest, but good horsepower and good torque in the mid-range.
You would really cut the bike a lot less slack if it had a lot of peak horsepower but not a lot in the middle, and it was hard to live with. The motor is really a peach. It's got a great torque band. Suzuki's fuel injection is, I won't say flawless, but it's as close to it as you're going to get. And it's a very, very easy to live with engine, even though it's incredibly powerful.
But the Suzuki, despite the ergonomic situation, which isn't terrible, but definitely on the radical end of the other three bikes, it does pretty well, and it has that incredible engine.
The Yamaha R1 is just the same as last year, with good horsepower, easy to turn, probably real good all-around package for the street, not too much horsepower. Feels real well built, real solid, but unfortunately still down on horsepower compared to the GSX R1000.
The Yamaha is much improved. When the Yamaha came out, it and I didn't get along very well, but Yamaha's really sharpened the edge on that thing in terms of making it fit the rider better. And although it is a carbureted motorcycle, it's right at the top in terms of the way it responds to the throttle. Carburetors feel as good as anybody's fuel injection.
Now, during the commercial break, our intrepid editors will make the journey from the streets of Los Angeles to the streets of Willow. That's the short course road racing circuit out at Willow Springs Raceway. Yes, the emphasis of this test is on everyday use, but those editors would have you believe it is very important for them to compare racetrack performance figures. I think it's just their excuse to go have some huge fun. But what the heck? If they're going to do it, we might as well go along, right? When we come back, we'll see what happens when the rubber meets the racetrack. Of Motorcyclist Magazine and the acknowledged master of Willow, the local guru of Go Fast, expert class road racer, Curtis Adams.
Along with Adams, it is senior editor Mitch Bain who brings the most racetrack experience to bear on this test.
Most of the bikes we've got carried over from last year. We've got the Kawasaki ZX9, we've got the Honda 929, and the R1 Yamaha. Each of the companies have made a few improvements on each of those, but mainly we got the Suzuki GSX-R 1000 out here, the new 2001 model. And from so far, from what we can tell, boy, the thing is very impressive.
The big question with all of this is how does the Suzuki stack up to the Kawasaki, the Honda, and the Yamaha, which we tested last year, and those bikes are basically unchanged, the Suzuki being the new one. And except for its ergonomic position, which is exact to the 750, which we talked about last year, it works pretty good. The motor's really torquey. It's a very rideable power plant. There's power everywhere in the rev band. And the suspension is very compliant, actually a little bit more compliant than the 750. The bike feels a little bit softer. It still steers nice, although the 1000 is a little bit heavier feeling and a little softer feeling than the 750. That actually is a plus out on the street.
Under a variety of conditions that the average rider might actually face on a weekend, the bikes were ridden as hard as possible. And prudence depends on the size of the bowl you eat your Wheaties out of, right?
The Yamaha has a lot of horsepower, there's no doubt about it. It makes its horsepower seems as though it's a little smoother. It doesn't quite have the torque the Suzuki has, and they'll both do it. They'll both definitely get around the track quick. The Suzuki's actually just a little bit intimidating out there on the racetrack. You know, you ride it around, it's kind of a cold day, and it'll spin the tire at will on you out there. And when it does hook up, it wants to pick the front wheel up and carry it. And, you know, you look like Evel Knievel in your practice runs out there sometimes. But, you know, you're doing the best to keep the front end down and to get the thing around the racetrack quickly. You really got to start pushing the Honda to get the lap times down there. It can be done, but you really got to ride it hard. You know, and you start making mistakes then. You know, I had it pop into neutral once on me, and I come out of one corner, and it kind of spun the rear, and then it jerked the front up, and it shook the bars real hard. And so, you know, when you start riding it that hard, that was not our goal here, was to have to try to ride them that hard to get lap times out of them. I don't think that Kawasaki's goal was to build something that would win open super sport classes across the country. I don't think that was their goal. They build a really good, stable motorcycle, a little bit more sit-up position, and it's more comfortable to ride if you had to pick one between them all to ride very far. So, you know, there's advantages and disadvantages in everything, but when you get it right to the racetrack, it doesn't quite cut the mustard with the other two.
Now, when you pull the magazine off the newsstand or out of your mailbox, you can go to the end of the article and find out which of the four came out on top in this comparison. A lot more went into making that determination, but after a brisk morning's ride through the canyons and a spirited afternoon at the racetrack, we begin to get an idea of how they shake out.
They're so close that you really have to be careful about picking them apart, that how these motorcycles perform on the street, in commuting, in all the other areas that are important to an owner, these are the ways that we really parse out these motorcycles and find out where they fit in the mix.
For me to ride on the street, probably still be the GSX-R 1000 because it's got a lot of mid-range, easy to ride on the freeway, and it's comfortable just like the 750. The bars feel a little wider than the 929, and the brakes are real good too.
The Suzuki does offer really good feedback, as the Yamaha does. It just feels a little bit physically larger than the Honda, as the Yamaha does. And, so I think the Suzuki probably is right with the Yamaha in terms of its backroad feel. Brakes, suspension, steering, feedback, and stability are all first rate. But I still think they end up a notch behind the Honda for overall backroad prowess.
It's more a case really in this bunch of preference when it comes down to on the street which one you're going to like. For instance, if you want to ride for a long way, and maybe if there's 100 miles between you and your favorite twisty road, the Kawasaki's going to be a good bike for you. But if all you care about is going around corners at a high rate of speed, then the Suzuki is it. And that's kind of how it shakes out. That's the way I see it. If it was me, they'd be the Suzuki, and then, you know, who cares after that?
Yes, a man ought to like his own opinion best, and to each his own, right? But we hope our sampling of editorial opinion, combined with a thorough read of the full story in this month's issue of Motorcyclist Magazine, might help you to make a fully informed decision about which leader bike will be the perfect fit for your garage. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about motor.